Buying or selling a home is one of the most important decisions you'll make in your entire life. Call the Holly Ritchie team today for a free market analysis.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Spanning the Need with Anthony Spano, Stories of Your Lifestyle. Today, I'm here with a great individual, Kurt Russell, the 2022 National Teacher of the Year. He was just announced about 2 or 3 months ago from the Council of Chief State School Officers. Kurt, thank you for joining me.
Anthony, thank you so much for having me this morning.
And we have mutual friends, and it's been an honor to kind of get to look up you and just kind of see what you've done over the past of your 20-some career. And I have to ask this: what did it feel when you actually got the call or the surprise and like, hey, you're the National Teacher of the Year?
Anthony, let me tell you, first of all, it was one of those imposter syndrome experience. It happened. Matter of fact, if I could go back, if you don't mind, I was announced a semifinalist during a basketball game. So I'm a basketball
which you're a varsity coach.
Yes.
I'm a varsity official.
Oh, okay. So I'm a basketball coach, and we was playing a team a couple miles from us, and it was during halftime. And I received a phone call from a Iowa number. So I looked, and I never really pick up the phone, of course, during the game. Then the person called again. And so it was halftime. I responded. I said, "Hi, this is Kurt Russell." And she said, "Yes, hi, I'm Sarah from CCSSO. And I just want to inform you, you are a finalist for the National Teacher of the Year." And from there, in February, Sarah called again. I was out with dinner with my family, and she said, "Kurt." I said, "Sarah." She said, "Kurt." I said, "Sarah, don't tell me." She said, "Yes, you have been selected National Teacher of the Year." And that's when, of course, my life changed professionally because of that.
It's funny. It's like, okay, what friend is pranking me?
Yes.
It's one of those things. It's like, wait a minute. Okay, I know I do good, but come on, Iowa. Wait a minute.
And like you say, Anthony, when Sarah called, I was just like, I cannot believe that. First of all, I'm a finalist. I couldn't believe I was Ohio Teacher of the Year. And then when I became a finalist, that was unbelievable. And then becoming National Teacher of the Year is something that I would never, ever dreamed of.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about that and kind of talk a bit about how you actually got into teaching, because some people, it's like one of those things. You're either a teacher or not a teacher, or a fireman, not a fireman.
You know, I always wanted to be a teacher, even when I was a little boy. And it was because of two teachers. My kindergarten teacher, her name was Miss Francine Toss. And Miss Toss used to read books that was so diverse. And I just fell in love with stories. And then my 8th grade math teacher, Mr. Larry Thomas, was the first Black male teacher I ever had. And the way he carried himself, his demeanor, his professionalism, he wore a suit and tie every single day. And the control that he had, and all the kids loved him. And I said, you know what? This is a pretty cool profession. And from there, I just had this journey of becoming a teacher.
Well, and you look at that as you have a specific role model.
Yes.
that you grow up with to be a specific mentor and everything. And we look at that as kind of how you began your teaching career. You talk a little bit about that, because I think some people think that, hey, you just get thrown into the classroom, but you really don't.
No, you don't. And for me, it was a process. I always tell people that I was not, you hear this story all the time where people are born to be a teacher. I never felt that way. I felt as though I was shaped and molded to become a teacher because of the influences of my prior teachers. not only Miss Toss, not only Mr. Thomas, but other teachers like Mrs. Valentine, who was my teacher at the high school, and Mr. Davis, my middle school English teacher. So it was so many individuals who shaped me, who believed in me, who molded me in becoming a teacher.
We talk about that as a teaching profession, and it's interesting. We talk about the profession itself, teachers, staff, just educators in general, from that K to 12 and higher ed. This was a stat when I was doing some research that since the pandemic, you're looking at mostly 2.6 million staff, teachers have in public and higher ed that have left the profession.
Wow.
An additional 1.3 million layoffs and another 700 and some thousand retirements. That actually comes from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that was an interest. That number jumped at me because of COVID. That's just from COVID. That's not over 10-year thing. How has COVID changed the way teaching has been done?
You know what? I think during that time and during virtual learning, as a teacher and as teachers, we are so inspired by personal connections, right? We like that human interaction. And COVID took that away because now instead of really being in that space of the classroom, we are doing this. We are on the computer teaching, and it was difficult for both sides. And when I say both sides, students and teachers, because we did not have that personal interaction, the engagement, even though teachers, including myself, really tried hard, it was not the same. And it really took a toll on teachers and students. And when students felt as though they were not being engaged, it's a response for teachers, because we felt the same way, that we was not getting that same energy. And I think it frustrated teachers as well as students.
Well, and there's been statistics all over the place about keeping teachers, recruiting teachers since that whole pandemic. And I know, I mean, I was getting my master's degree, so I was online. And I can only imagine with students, maybe depending on certain areas and not having computers to get on the internet, broadband. I mean, so there was more than just, hey, you're going to go online and teach.
Yeah.
Talk a little. You're in I think Oberlin High School, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So, what does that look like? What did that look like in your school?
And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it was some inequalities that took place because of virtual learning. And so Oberlin City Schools did a wonderful job of just broadening our bandwidth for internet capability. We also had a great relationship with our local cable company to make sure that each and every family had hotspots, whether it was a community center that they went to, or even putting hotspots within the neighborhood. So we recognized that, and we grown from it. And it really benefited Oberlin that we were so intentional of making sure that each and every student had the same opportunity online to learn.
And as we're pretty much through the first month of school, and it seems that the capacity of you, and we saw a lot of good stories about teachers going out trying to find the students where they were, but then you got a shortage now this fall between teachers, bus drivers. I mean, Ohio is huge right now. How do you continue to keep and recruit the workforce for like those leaders? I mean, how do you do that?
You know, I think I always say this, Anthony, that there's a reason why there's a shortage. And my own personal thoughts is that sometimes, many times, educators, support staff feel as though they are not respected, right? And so respected in regards to having a voice in decision making, respected in regards to pay. So there are some individuals who have to work several jobs to make ends meet. And I think it's unfortunate that a teacher have to take on a second job in order to put food on the table, in order to have good shelter. And as long as we continue that cycle of not paying educators what they deserve, you will continue to have this shortage when individuals could go out and make just as much working in a factory or even some cases a fast food restaurant.
And we look at that as those types of first jobs for
Yeah.
those students, as any 16, 17-year-old may do in some capacity. How do we look at that there is the shortage, but how do you empower, how do you begin to empower your students to provide a good example, because of you're probably doing 7 8 classes a day depending on that, and how do you empower them, and just really make them say, hey, we're here for you?
In my particular class, what I try to do is number one, create a safe space for my students. And then number two, I'm so intentional of what I teach. So I make sure that each and every one of my students, no matter if you are black, white, male, female, gay, straight, on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, I try to make sure that each student could see themselves in the classroom. See, for me, that's empowerment. I was the type of student that I got bored if the lesson did not reflect my own
You're
personal
not you're not
lived
we're the
experience.
same. Like if it just, I mean, if it just doesn't interest me, like,
Yeah,
period, I'm just kind of, I'm like, okay, I need something that interests me.
yes, yes. I'm just in la la land. And so I realized that about myself. And I try to make sure that my students never feel that way. So I try to be intentional in what I teach and to include, and history is a great subject to do so. But I also tell like math teachers, you could do the same thing. No, every day or every week, make sure that you highlight a individual that is marginalized that made great contributions to mathematics, scientists, so forth and so on.
And we look at that, and we kind of almost like a free to learn type
Yeah.
mentality. And how do you do that with everything going on right now
Mhm.
in education?
Because Anthony, it's my obligation to do so. And I don't think twice about it. I know that the service I provide is student centered. And so everything I do must reflect students and to uplift students and to elevate students. And that's how I do it. It's difficult. I know it sounds easy, but it's not. But I have to be intentional of what I do.
And we look at just the whole mentality of education, how it's changed over the last 20 years. I remember I used to take pre-algebra in 10th grade. Now it's, I think, pre-algebra in the third grade. And how does that change? Like, you've been in teaching for 25 years.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Because you're changing, you're evolving, and everything is advancing.
It
So
sure
how does that happen?
Anthony, it sure is evolving. And I always tease my students today that they are so much more well advanced than I was at the time.
Mhm.
And as
Yeah, I think they all were.
that's right, you have kindergartens and first graders who could go on the computer and navigate their way through different programs that I could never imagine doing so. But it's an evolving profession, which I'm proud of because I don't think we could remain stagnant of what we do. I always consider that we need to be changing, making sure that we keep our same values, that students are first, but making sure that we really connect with our students more than what we used to.
And we look at kind of like the diverse of teaching,
Yes.
and we look a lot about that. And what does that look like, of the value of that?
In regards, Anthony, to the diversity of teaching,
Teaching force, correct.
yeah, it's so critical. It's hard to become what you can't see. And it's important for me to have a positive reflection as a Black male teacher, not only on Black students, but on all students, because we need to break down these barriers and these stereotypes that we have about each and every group. And we need a diverse working force because we bring diverse thinking and diverse pedagogy into our lessons and making sure that we, enhance our students' minds by introducing them to different areas. That's important.
And we talked a little bit about like freedom of learning and stuff. What does that look like in your classroom? Because as a history person, you have probably seen numerous stories and things across the whole spectrum. How do you do that nowadays? Because remember, back 20, 25 years ago, history was history.
Yes.
Now it's evolving to a different type of history, and I it's hard for me to explain. I don't know the answer of how that would work. So how do you go like kind of navigate that?
Well, what I try to do in my class is to make sure that I make history relevant to current. And so even if I'm discussing a topic such as the War of 1812, I try to make a connection with a real world experience today. So that's the freedom of learning that takes place in my classroom because everything that I teach has a current story that goes along with it. Because let's be honest, there's students who will get absolutely bored if we are talking about the Federalists and the anti-Federalists, right? And we reading the Federalist papers and they are saying, what relevance is this today? And so we bring up issues that, those individuals during that time period was thinking, and then what our current political individuals are thinking today and try to make a connection. So that's the freedom in my classroom that students are able to discuss current issues that reflect them.
Just have to ask this question.
Yes.
During the school year, I know you guys plan as teachers quite a bit. What is the most probably subject in history that you really love coming to during your classroom?
Wow, that is a great, great question.
Because I know sometimes it's like it's everything, but I know each person has their one that they get oh, it's great. I can do more with this than anything.
Well, for me, I would have to say it's Reconstruction, that time period right after the Civil War, because I could really connect that to current America, rather from a political standpoint, from a racial standpoint, from an economic standpoint. Everything that were experienced during Reconstruction has a great correlation for today. And I think students are really fascinated by those stories.
What can we learn from our history that maybe that some people wouldn't think of? No matter what that subject may be that is prominent to today?
Wow, what a great question. Anthony, I think that the impact of stories, and what I really trying to address with this, history is nothing but stories. And as we learn history, as we read history, we are reading stories. And each and every person, each and every family, each and every community has a story. And we could learn by just accepting and making sure that stories are being told correctly and being told truthfully. And I think that's what we can learn from history, that it's our stories and it's our personal stories and it's like diverse stories that could really move us towards a more unified society.
And we look at that as in when history was back in my day, 20 some years ago, we saw it as you read the book, remember the old Britannica.
Yes.
30
Britannica.
Yeah, the 30 volume I had in my basement, and you're doing research projects and you look at it and as a student, you're saying, okay, this is history. This is history. Now you talking with students, it's like, oh yeah, this is my history. It's like, well, the difference between a history and my history.
Yes.
So we look at a couple different elements of that. So at the end of the day, When your students walk out that door, what advice do you give them?
To be honest, to be true, to be truthful to themselves, and that they are valued. I really believe that as I teach history, what I'm teaching is making sure that students are feeling important and valued within themselves and courageous as well. A lot of times, students are embarrassed, shy because of maybe their family backgrounds. And what I'm trying to address that every single student, every single one of us have value, and what you bring to the table is worthy. And that's what I want my students to get out of my class.
And we've been talking to people, and we got a quote from President Becky Pringle of the NEA, and this is I pair a quote here. He is building a community of young critical thinkers who will enter the world more curious, open-minded, and knowledgeable, who will be able to see the world as it truly is and demand more.
Yes.
What's your reaction to that?
Um,
Her quote of you.
well, I think it's profound. I really appreciate that quote because that's what I try to do. I want to make sure that my students are thinkers. I don't want them to be robots. I want them to challenge my thoughts in a respectful manner, to have discourse within my classroom that is respectful. And I think a lot of times our current adults could learn from our students and could learn how to engage in a more meaningful and respectful dialogue.
And I kind of build on that is there's always that one student that loves to challenge the teacher.
Yes.
You ever get that?
All the time. I love it.
And I have to ask this, and you might be a little biased.
Mhm.
They ever beat you on that?
Oh, yes. Yes. I could recall, Anthony, we were studying I think the Spanish Civil War, and a student challenged me on the idea of nationalism from the rebel side. And it was one of those eye-opening, like, wow, I believe you are correct. And I'm not embarrassed. In the classroom, I tell students all the time on the first day that I do not know everything. There's a lot of things that I'm learning, and hopefully that I could learn some things from you as students.
Well, that's funny because students sometimes it's and I was like this as 16, 18, we know it all.
Yes.
and it's funny, everyone laughs at us, but I don't care who you are. You can be 30, 40, or 50 or 60 years old. Back when you were in high school, you probably thought it in some capacity.
That's right.
You knew it all.
Yes, I knew. I was that type of student myself, where my hand was raised all the time.
and then the teacher's like, "You're wrong." No,
yes.
I'm right. So, yeah, I get it. Kurt, I appreciate you taking your time. Kurt Russell, the 2022 National Teacher of the Year from Oberlin, Ohio. I appreciate you taking time. If people want to follow you on any Twitter or Facebook, where would they go?
Yes, my Twitter account is Kurt Senior _, and I'm not on Instagram, so just on Twitter. So thank you so much, Anthony, for the time, and I really do appreciate being on your podcast.
I appreciate it. And at the end of each show, I like to have some fun with my guests.
Yes.
So I'm going to rapid fire some questions, simple ones. The answer can be professional or personal. It's totally your call. I say there's no right or wrong answer. Okay. People may object with that sentiment, but here we go. Okay. What's your best experience?
The White House. Visiting the White House. As a history teacher, recognizing the power that was in the Oval Office, the individuals, the legislation, policies that was created, just being in that space was probably the most impactful experience.
I'm a big West Wing guy.
Oh yes,
the old one back 10 years ago. Martin Sheen was the president.
Yes,
it just shows you what really goes on in the White House. And it's funny because if you look at back end stories with them, that they were trying to get it right, like their advisors were past White House staffers, like what they did. And it was just an interesting story. And so I could watch that all the time.
Yes, the White House.
Best memory.
My children being born. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I have a 1-year-old right now.
Okay,
And
congratulations.
thank you. And she's a handful, and it's got this big, you wake up in the morning, she's just with this big smile hitting you. And I'm like, really? I'm like, really? I'm like, you can't get mad.
Well, do me a favor, Anthony. Enjoy it while you can. I have a 23-year-old and an 18-year-old. So
Yeah.
they get older and they forget to hit you.
They forget you probably, period, after they leave the house, unless they want to come home and say, can I have some money?
That's right.
What's your best accomplishment?
Raising 2 good kids.
Okay.
Yes.
Who's your role model?
My mother. Her hard work. She grew up in segregated Alabama, Jim Crow. Her and my father, moved to Ohio for job opportunities, and just a hardworking lady.
Okay. And then my last one is this one I love asking because I think it just shows a lot about how when we really want to think about something. So if there was one person you'd want to meet, past or present, who would it be and why?
Martin Luther King Jr. Because of how he handled a stressful, difficult time period with love and grace. And I just want to ask, how could you do that? And I think what we are experiencing now in our country, some difficult times, we need love and grace.
I appreciate your time, Kurt. It's congratulations. Enjoy the road and the journey. We appreciate everyone joining us. We thank Kurt and his team at Oberlin for letting us have this time with him. And if you want to see more shows, stories, or even events, please go to spanningtheneed.com. Everyone, have a great day. Good night.